He's the Arizona Senator, John McCain, joining us in our man cave. What do you think? What do you think of the digs here, Senator?
It's really impressive. I've seen it on television in your various promos and others, but it's a very, very impressive. Very impressive.
Are you allowed to have a man cave at home?
No.
Why?
I'm henpecked.
No, if you said your wife...
Actually, my wife and kids are involved in sports, and one of the things, we watch a lot of sports together, and we go to a lot of this. Phoenix has all the major teams, and plus ASU, and we've got U of A, and so we spend a lot of time at sporting events, and this has not been a great year for Arizona teams.
No, not yet. Did you play sports growing up?
Yes, I did. I played them all, not very well. Mediocre, I would say. I was on the wrestling team, the Naval Academy. I was pinned in some of the nicest gyms in the East. I boxed Golden Gloves. I was defeated on several occasions. I was a high school athlete, and as you know, those are the most avid sports fans.
So you were a fighter?
Yes.
A boxer?
Yeah. And frankly, it helped when I was in prison that I'd taken a few punches.
But for those and a large portion probably aren't familiar with your military record, and you were prisoner of war for 5.5 years?
Yep, 5.5 years.
Describe the conditions.
Very rough most of the time. I was in solitary confinement for nearly 3 years, and
you don't talk to anybody at all?
Well, we
guards?
tapped each other on the wall. We were able to communicate with each other by using a simple tap code that we would tap and communicate with each other.
Give me for instance, if you tap something.
Sure, Dan. It's very difficult, but you use divide the alphabet into 5 different groups of 5 letters each, and that really sounds complicated. But if I wanted Dan, I would write A because it's in the first letter. A B C D, A F L L M N. Dan. Okay. Now, if you're communicating through the wall, like I did with the same guy for about a year, it's like the old telegraph operators. You can tap to each other almost as fast as you can talk. And what was a big subject? Sports. The guy next to me,
really? His
favorite athlete was Stan Musial. He worshipped. Ted Williams was mine. And we would go back and forth. And sports was a huge thing. And when there was a bombing pause for a while. We didn't get any new prisoners, and then there was resumed it, and new prisoners came. First thing we wanted to know was who won the Super Bowl. I mean, sports is very, very important. I want to mention a couple of things to you. One of the greatest experiences of my life was being with Rudy Giuliani in the World Series in 2001. He put his face on the Jumbotron in our stadium in Phoenix, Arizona, and 45,000 people stood and cheered. Great moment. Another great moment for me was by a long series of circumstances, I got to spend an afternoon with Ted Williams. And that was one of the great experiences of my life.
What did you want to know from Ted Williams?
I wanted to know about his baseball exploits and also his flying. He spent 3 seasons in World War II and in Korea, where he was called back, and he flew, and he missed those seasons. Can you imagine what his numbers would have been if he hadn't lost those 3 seasons? Make a long story short, John Glenn, by the way, said that Ted Williams was the best natural pilot he ever flew with. So one of the questions I used to ask, I spent this afternoon, he wanted to know about politics, I wanted to know about baseball.
It's usually the way it is.
But one quick story about Ted Williams. He was flying a Marine jet, very rudimentary jet, first one in Korea. His plane was shot up, and it was on fire, and he couldn't get his landing gear down, and he landed wheels up at an outlying field. Now, that is a feat of aeronautical skill that is hard for me to describe to you. So I had heard that, and so I said to him, why didn't you just eject from the airplane? It was on fire. You'd lost your engine. He said, he's a large man. He said, I looked at the canopy bow. That's the metal thing that goes above you. So I looked at the canopy bow, and I looked at my knees, and I knew that if I ejected, I would break both my knees and maybe never play baseball again.
Wow.
Isn't that an amazing story? And he was a really great guy. He was my kind of idol.
He's an outdoor guy. He's a fisherman.
Yeah, he hated the media.
He's Senator John McCain joining us in our man cave. Speaking of the military, Pat Tillman just came up on the 10-year anniversary of his death. For the Hall of Fame, would you have any problem if we put Pat Tillman into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
I think it'd be a suitable honor. God knows what the things he would have accomplished if he hadn't decided to serve his country, and it's one of these stories that makes you proud and it makes you sad because some of us really question the depiction of what happened to him from early on, including his family, especially his mother. And his mother really has never, understandably, people get over it, but mothers never get over it.
But why didn't we get answers, Senator?
They covered it up.
Why? It was an embarrassment?
It was propaganda? An embarrassment, propaganda, inexcusable. I love the military. I cherish the military. I worship the military. But when something like that happens, it just makes you say, God, because no matter how he departed, he was still serving his country with incredible courage. But his legacy goes on. We have a 10K run, Pat's Run.
Did you
in
meet
Phoenix.
him?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'd met him a couple of times. We have Pat's Run. His wife is just carried on his legacy. There's an institute. And no, I would think it'd be wonderful if Pat were inducted. And I, speaking of that, Pat Tillman, it's unusual that he served. World War II, everybody served. It's very interesting.
But
everybody.
Could you imagine taking LeBron James
and say three seasons
and you're
out?
gonna, three seasons over fighting wherever in the Middle East?
Times have changed, my friend. Times have changed. But in those days, we had universal service. Everybody served. We had a draft.
Yeah.
And of course, nowadays that's not the case.
Would that ever come back? Would you want the draft to come back?
No, but I sure want young Americans to serve and there's a whole lot of ways to serve the country besides being in the military. I've never met a single person who didn't do Teach for America, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, military that didn't profit more from it than best experience of their lives. Best experiences of my life, frankly, were serving in the company of heroes. One who just died recently, who was a great, Robinson Reisner was his name, an ace in Korea that was in prison with us. Quick story, Robinson Reisner was on the cover of Time magazine. In-depth story about him, picture of him on the cover. He got shot down about 6 months later. He's in the prison. He's taken in, all tied up, sitting on a stool. And the head of all the camps, who was a very erudite, French-speaking erudite guy, walks in, throws a copy of Time magazine on the desk in front of him with his picture on the front. It said, Colonel Reisner, we've been waiting for you. Can you imagine?
Well, what do you make of that, what is it, Unbroken?
That's a great story. It's a great story. Yeah, it's a great story. It really is.
Did you ever meet...
I met him once.
Yeah.
I met him once.
They're going to make that into a movie.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think, look, one of the greatness of America is the heroes that we have, and Pat Tillman ranks right up there amongst all of them. Arizona's very proud that he was our son.
But what when you hear people complain, I mean, you were in prison for 5.5 years, solitary for 2 years, and somebody complains about whatever.
Yeah, but I understand that. Look, I complain. I complained that my plane was late. I almost said it didn't get here. Okay,
you're in traffic. You were complaining. But does your wife ever say, "Stop complaining"?
Sure, sure, absolutely.
When we come back,
listen, I'm in the business that has a 13% approval rating. So,
what is your approval rating?
It's pretty high, but there's a strong anti-incumbency feeling out there all over America, and it's legitimate. And it's legitimate.
All right. When we come back, I want to ask you a couple of things. What happened with Donald Sterling, losing his team, all about this NSA, Daniel Snyder and the Redskins paying college athletes. If that's okay, you stay around?
Anything.
Okay. You're going to see something in this next segment you haven't been exposed to, and you've been exposed to an awful lot, Senator. It's called flinchball. I'm going to let you see the Danettes play flinchball.
All right.
All right, you ready? See the T-shirt behind you, Senator?
Yeah.
Right there, it says flinchball.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen coming up this next segment.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right, we'll continue with Senator McCain. It's the Arizona Senator, John McCain, in our man cave here, kind enough to stay with us. If I looked in your phone right now, most impressive number in your phone?
Probably outside of my family.
Who do you have in there that might surprise me?
My friend Lindsey Graham is in there. You know, he's a senator from South Carolina. He and I are very close.
Do you have President Obama's cell number? No. You don't?
No, I don't. I doubt if that will be in there anytime soon.
Does he have
Coburn,
yours?
I'm sure he does. Yes, I know that he does. Friends of mine, guys in the Senate that I admire. All of my kids in my family. Sarah Palin is in there.
Can we call Sarah right now and just say hello?
Call her up and let's call her.
Yeah, just call her. See if would she answer?
I'm sure she would.
Yeah.
We'll see if she does or not. If that's what she'd like to do.
Yeah, I'd like to hear how she's doing. She's used to be a sportscaster.
Yeah, she's a big sports fan, and her husband, is really he's a dog sled guy.
Iditarod?
Yeah, he's been a champion in that. He's a very fine guy.
Do you think she's seeing that you're calling and
I don't know, maybe turning me down? You never know. You never know. We were talking about running.
I'm sorry, but the person you called has a voicemail box.
Okay.
Okay. She didn't answer.
I was going to leave a message there, Senator.
I wanted you to. You were talking about running for president. I was telling you, I have this line. After I lost, I slept like a baby. Sleep 2 hours, wake up and cry. Sleep 2 hours, wake up and cry.
How much does it hurt, though?
Listen, you just do your best and you move on. One thing in life that I've learned is, boy, you can't look back. Was it Satchel Paige? Was it that said, "Never look back. You never know what's coming up behind you."
Yeah. Getting closer.
Like there you go.
What would you have done differently?
Oh God!
Is there one thing where you say, "Had I done this, I would have been president"?
Not really.
Not one thing.
Look, the day I know this isn't on sports, but we were 3 points ahead. The day the stock market went down 700 points. At the end of that day, we were down 4 points. I mean, people watched their 401ks. Disappear, Getting back to a second to Ted Williams and DiMaggio, I asked Williams about his relationship with DiMaggio. By the way, the book, I'm trying to think of his name now, that wrote the book about DiMaggio. It's really a very, I'm drawing a blank, but it's one of the great books I've ever read.
It's not 41, is it?
No, it was really he really had kind of a sad life near the end, DiMaggio, as you know.
Yes.
Estranged from his brothers and all that. But anyway, Williams said that they didn't like each other at all, and then in later years they became rather friendly, which was nice to hear.
I wanted to ask you about Donald Sterling. Obviously, what he said.
Look, we can have a short conversation. Unacceptable, racist. I'm glad what they did, and I read that one of the really great guys I've ever known, Kevin Johnson, was one of the people who was integral in that. Unacceptable. I'm glad they did it. End of story.
But what about taping somebody in his own home?
Well,
using that.
It's the world we live in. You don't like it, but everything I say, I expect to be recorded. And that's just the way we live, Dan. I mean, it's something you got to accept. I don't particularly like it, but it is what it is. 53% of the American people in a poll believe that their telephone conversations are being listened to.
Are they?
No, but there have been abuses of this system, and young people particularly are not happy. We've forgotten a little bit about 9/11 and how if we'd intercepted the right communications, we might have prevented 9/11. But anyway, it is what it is.
But the whole NSA and,
we've got to be more transparent.
Would you put this person in prison who recorded this conversation?
No, I don't think that I would put the person in prison, but it is an invasion of privacy. But look, we're all grown people, and we have to realize we live in the 21st century, and I've said things in the past that I wish I hadn't said, and it just is what it is.
Well, Daniel Snyder with the Redskins. Do we then ratchet the spotlight a little bit brighter on him because of what happened with Donald Sterling?
Well, I'm not sure I connect the two, but I do believe that if I were him, I would sit down with Native American leaders. I'd get there are I've been involved in Indian affairs for a long, long time. We have a very large Native American population in our state. I'd call the Native American leaders together, and I'd sit down with them, and I'd say, okay, what is it that you want? What is it? How do you want me to do it? Here's why I am. If I were him, I would have a dialogue. And if they think it's that offensive and terrible, I would certainly probably. Look, I'm not the owner, and he has the rights of an owner, but frankly, I would probably change the name. If myself, I'm not offended. You're not offended, but there are Native Americans that are.
Yeah, I'm not the one being called that,
sure,
though.
Sure.
But if we did that with any other race, I mean, imagine if we did that. I mean, it's a slur, right? They consider it a slur.
They do consider it a slur, particularly dating back to the time. By the way, one of the really bad chapters in our history, the civilization clash between the, quote, white man and the Native American, and some of the things that were done, Wounded Knee and other places, are not a good chapter, a trail of tears. And so that the sensitivity of Native Americans, particularly young ones who are now moving up the economic ladder in other ways, if they're offended, then their feelings need to be taken in consideration.
Because I'm okay. I like when we depict the Chicago Blackhawks. I think is the best logo in all of sports.
Sure,
I think it's spectacular.
And I think the Blackhawks, they would like that. There was this problem in the University of North Dakota, the so-called Fighting Sioux. Yeah, as you know. But at the same time, we do honor our Native Americans.
If you were Commissioner Goodell,
I'd sit down with Snyder and tell him to
change the name.
I'd say, look, have a dialogue and then come back to me. And if the Native Americans are not satisfied with that dialogue, then you ought to consider changing it. Whether he can force him or not, I don't know what the ownership situation is. I think your friend, the owner of the Clippers, is going to be in court.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I think he wants to go in court.
Sure, I think so. Challenging the ruling.
Players getting paid and college athletes.
I'm against it, but at the same time, when we have the commercialization and these coaches making all the money and all that, there's an imbalance here. You know that. It's turned into a big business, and the college athletes are the ones that are providing the entertainment, and yet they're not really getting much of the benefit. You know what I think might happen over a time is it might be one and done, like we're seeing in college basketball. And these kids, why not get out and make money as soon as you can? And so, is there a terrible imbalance? Yes, but unions, I'm not sure that does it. And then there's certain union rules that you'd have to. It's a lot more complicated than just saying, "Hey, we're going to have a players' union."
I could see some kind of stipend there that allows them to be student
Absolutely.
athlete. I think we got to bring back the student to the student athlete. That's part of the problem. It's such big business that people don't care. It's more about you on the field.
I think a stipend would be fine, but what if the University of Texas offers a higher stipend than the University of Alabama?
Senator's got to be the same. It's got to be. By the way, Alabama would probably offer more.
They would probably offer more.
Do you guys have a fantasy draft in the Senate?
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, some of us do.
Yeah,
some of us do. It's not a regularized thing, but I do it.
Heated?
And by the way, speaking again of great people, I was with just the other day, Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
I've never met a finer guy.
Yeah.
But I also think the day that Anquan Boldin left the Cardinals was the worst turn of events. Wouldn't you agree? Because then they could all concentrate on Larry instead of. And look, Bolden, I guess he just re-signed with the 49ers for another couple
Couldn't you have
years.
stepped in as senator to?
Absolutely, because I am an expert and I know everything, and I should be telling the owner exactly how they should run their team. Exactly. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
What issue should government be involved in sports?
As little as possible. As little as possible, really. But when it comes to the use of PEDS, I think that the federal government and the World Anti-Doping and USADA have to be involved. As we speak, there's some people in a lab inventing some substance that will enhance someone's performance and not be detected. It's going to be a constant challenge. And why am I so much opposed to it? Not only because of their health, but also it gives them an unfair advantage. When I was playing linebacker in high school and some guy had come to me and said, hey, you take this and you can play in the NFL, I'd have said, where do I take it? Where give it to me. That we can't do this to these young people. And you've got to show me that this substance doesn't hurt them and harm their health badly. Then I won't feel as strongly as I do.
What about, I give you one chance.
Okay.
I give you a one and done with performance-enhancing drugs. That if you get caught, because Ryan Braun with the Brewers,
I know,
still
he's
getting
playing very well.
He's getting $100 million.
Yeah, and apparently he's playing very well without doing it. Look, I don't think it's right. I think the penalty should have been probably more severe, but it is what it is. And I also believe in redemption. Look, I've made enough mistakes and done enough things in my life. I believe in redemption. If they pay the fine, if they do the time, as we say, then move on. But as far as being in the Hall of Fame is concerned, frankly, I'm with those who say...
Would you put Bonds in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely not.
Clemens?
No, not these people. And I would rely on one person to give me that advice, and that would be a guy named Henry Aaron.
Is he the all-time home run champion?
Hank Aaron, I think, is the guy who I think should be making the judgment. Don't you agree?
Yes.
He's the greatest, really one of the really foremost people.
He's one of my
by
idols.
The way, who overcame some serious racial
Well, they
problem.
were trying to kill him when he was going to break Babe Ruth's record. But I think he's the most underrated baseball player in history.
I do too.
Because of what he did, how he did it. He was in the shadow of Mays and Mantle.
Yep.
He played in Atlanta and Milwaukee, not exactly media capitals. And he just went there and did his job. He never had a season where he hit 55 or 60 home runs. It was always in the 40s. And he was just a classy man.
When we were having hearings on this issue, he testified. I tell you, he exudes a charisma that is really remarkable.
We'll continue with Senator McCain here in the Man Cave. We'll come back. Senator McCain, kind enough to stay with us. Been a treat. Favorite athlete right now?
I think Larry Fitzgerald.
Okay.
He epitomizes to me everything. Former athlete, Kevin Johnson. Look at what Kevin Johnson has done. Mayor of Sacramento.
Yeah.
By the way, married a wonderful, beautiful woman who was an esteemed educator. And Larry Fitzgerald, look, he does nothing but good things all over our valley and all over our state. And I've never met anybody who really didn't like him. Steve Nash, I'm a great admirer of. He did wonderful things while he was with us. Jeff Hornacek is doing a great job coaching the Suns.
But sports kept you sane during your run for the presidency, right?
When I would do 16, 18, 20-hour day and go back to whatever hotel room, which after a while they all looked the same, the one thing I would do is turn on ESPN. And that way I could see what was going on and take my mind off it and get to sleep.
Decompress.
Yeah, and get to sleep. And that really was important then, because otherwise just lay there with your eyes open thinking about, what did I do today? Why didn't I? All that kind of stuff. But it also comes from the fact that, my life has been a lot about sports. And so that's what I enjoyed. And I admire these athletes enormously, a lot of these people, and particularly with all the mistakes I've made at my advanced age, and I see these people in the spotlight and every phrase that is parsed, and I admire them. It's tough.
Before I let you go, the future of Army, Navy, or the military with their programs, and can we do anything, should we do anything to get them up to maybe where these other schools are?
Navy's been playing pretty good football, and I worry about the disparity between Army and Navy. CBS is going to stop televising them unless there's a closer contest. I think there's enough patriotism in America.
Now, you're not just taking a shot at Army, right?
No, I want Army to win a game.
Okay.
And I know that my Navy friends are now screaming in pain, but it's got to be competitive. Otherwise, people aren't going to watch. I think we could do some more things to attract athletes to the service academies, but the service academies are service academies. But, Dan, I'm so old that I remember going to the Army-Navy game in old JFK Stadium, 110,000 people, both Army and Navy being in the top 10. That was a very golden era. People like Pete Dawkins and Roger Staubach and people like that. But
Glenn Davis.
Glenn Davis.
Yeah,
that was a little before Davis and Blanchard. But the point is that we could do a little bit better job on recruiting, and we do have a rule now that if they're drafted in the top 10, first I've forgotten how many rounds, then they can go direct to pro football. I think that's good. But there are just so many demands from the service academies. But Americans are so patriotic now. They watch these games, frankly, out of patriotism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I do. I go to a West Point game every single year. I take my family up. It's great to have you.
A wonderful spot.
Oh, I love it.
You always expect to see General MacArthur coming around the corner.
I love it. I think it takes you back. I want my kids to understand. It makes
Long
you
gray line.
very, very, very proud.
All right.
Senator, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's great to see you. Got some. I got some Dan Patrick Show gear. I don't know if
wear it always.
I would have you stay for beer and wings, but I know you're a busy man.
I've got to go into the Big Apple, and congratulations to John Wall and all their success. They have electrified the city of Satan.
We're going to have John Wall. John Wall is coming in next hour. Thank you, Senator.